Welcome to Aging in Place Strategies and Answers with Linda Prio. Will it be possible to remain in my home as I age? Do I feel safe in my home? How do I figure out how much support I will need when my health needs start to change? What if I decide to move into a community instead? Which community will meet my needs now and in the future? Who will play a role in helping me with decision making? Do you ask yourself these same questions? Aging in Place Strategies and Answers can help you gain practical knowledge that will help you create your own Aging in Place roadmap. If you are already a care partner, a power of attorney, or in crisis mode with your Aging in Place strategy, you will learn what you need to know that you don't know. For over 20 years, I have been marketing Aging in Place services to clients and educating families and healthcare professionals in how to put aging in place strategies into place. When you utilize aging in place, you are allowed to choose where you want to live and make those decisions so that you can retain your quality of life. Welcome back to Aging in Place, Strategies and Answers. I'm glad you're here today because today we're going to talk about the importance of doing your homework and checking the facts. So I like to listen to the radio. I'm in my car a lot. And one of the shows that I like to listen to is a radio show, and they talk about financial matters. And a caller on this particular day had called in and said to the host, well, I'm thinking about retiring soon. And the host said, well, do you have a handle on your mortgage and your expenses and things like that? And they said, well, when I retire, I'm going to be on Medicare. And so they're going to be paying all of my medical costs. Well, I knew that that was not a true statement. And so I listened intently to see what the host might say next. And it seemed like the host was really slow in responding. So I'm counting off the seconds. So about 5 seconds later, the host responds, well, we thank you for calling in today, but I also want you to know that that statement is not exactly true. Well, if you're listening today and you know the answer, or you're listening today and you don't know the answer, I want you to keep listening because you're going to hear the answer to this question about whether or not Medicare is going to pay for all your medical expenses. There are a lot of things that are not exactly true, and you may even be hearing them from professionals. Well, the technique might be useful, but when it comes to aging and it comes to your life plan, it is important that you do your homework and you keep listening to my podcast and you fact check. Now, keep in mind, just like your doctor, if he has a specialty, he knows everything about that specialty. But does he know how the other parts and the pieces fit into that diagnosis and what he has told you? And this is what I find as I'm able to sit in and listen in on what people are telling folks when I'm actually working with people that are retired and who are going through different and difficult diagnoses and who are trying to figure out what their finances mean and what they should have done legally to help them to be able to age well and know that things are being taken care of. So here's a couple of facts that people will throw out, and you've got to fact check this stuff. Well, all seniors move to a higher level of care as they age. No, not all seniors move to a higher level of care. Less than 20% actually move to a higher level of care. And falls are not a normal part of aging. So if you think that when you are aging, you're going to fall, that's not exactly true. But there is always usually a reason for the fall. And what is that reason. And then, of course, it is not true that every senior is going to fail in their memory. Well, that's just not true at all. Certainly, some folks get age-related dementia. Certainly, some folks do exhibit with some cognitive decline, but certainly not everybody. And so fact checking is very important, as well as asking questions. And if you know me and you know this show, this is something that I tell you all the time. So if you're a regular listener or just new tuning in, you know that I usually encourage you to get professional advice. But you also must fact check and you also must ask questions. Be educated on what is being advised. Is it appropriate for you, your aging life plan, or your family situation? And if you don't feel that you fully understand what is being told you, then ask again. And if the person trying to explain it cannot help you understand, then maybe you need to consult another person. Well, here's an illustration from my own situation. I have told you before that annually, on the date that we created our legal trust, our living trust, we usually review it to see what needs to be changed. So when we were going through our original trust, we saw some things that probably needed to be changed. At the very least, I think it was time. I felt like it was time to get a review. And I had heard from other professionals in my field that there had been some changes to the power of attorney documents and the healthcare directives. So I called the attorney and made an appointment. We talked through some changes that would need to be made in our documents. We talked through perhaps what could be advanced estate planning. And there were some things that I simply did not understand when we got our drafts of our trust documents back. And so fortunately, I was able to call the office and get a paralegal who could explain it to me. But at the end of that conversation, I was asked if I would like for the lawyer to review the documents with us now that we are in the final draft process. And I said, yes, I definitely would. First of all, it was free and it comes with that consultation and with all the legal work that we had done. And secondly, she's a lawyer. And so if I have any additional questions or concerns, then she can be my resource and my go-to. And then I know that I have heard from the right person about what my documents actually mean. So, you want to know why I bring these topics to you today? Well, it's because I have 20 plus years of professional experience, plus my own experiences that enable me to see why you and I need this guidance. So before we begin discussing my topic for today, let's be clear on the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Now, a word from our sponsor.
Are you looking for resources on senior living? Check out guideforseniorliving.com for our free online senior resource guide to find senior housing, care, and community connections. Start searching now at guide number 4, seniorliving.com. That's guideforseniorliving.com to find the contact information for senior housing, care, and community connections.
Now let's return to the podcast. It's important for us to discuss these definitions quickly because people always use them interchangeably and they're just not the same thing. Medicare is medical care. So that is your health benefit. But Medicaid, think about that, is aid or help with Part B doctor visits, labs, and some limited personal care assistance. Both of these, Medicare and Medicaid, are government programs. And both, of course, have limitations as to what they can cover and what they're going to pay. For example, traditional Medicare covers 80% of the medical care, and then you cover the other 20%. And that is exactly what the host of the show that I was listening to informed the caller, that Medicare does not pay all of your medical expenses. Now, let's talk about Medicaid, which is that aid or help, and what is meant by the term Medicaid planning. Medicaid planning is a specific type of planning that will qualify someone for the government benefit available to them under Medicaid. Medicaid is usually available as a government benefit for someone who has few assets. Many financial planners talk about Medicaid planning, but consulting an attorney that does estate planning can help you learn what this means and what is involved. And many times financial planners and attorneys work together to come up with the best plan to help their client age successfully and to have money and all of their legal documents in order. And because of my role, I have had the privilege of talking with financial planners and attorneys personally and professionally. So here is a quick overview of the kinds of information that will pop up in a normal conversation. One lawyer told me that his clients, the people that he provides services for, have assets. Now, meaning that they have wealth. He says they are not wealthy, but they have assets. And he said, when I asked them if they would like to Medicaid plan for the future, they usually tell him no. Now, I'm curious about that. Either he's doing a great job informing his clients of what it means to Medicaid plan, or they have enough assets that they feel that they can be financially responsible for their care as they age. But it's always a good question to ask. Why would I need to Medicaid plan? Would I want to Medicaid plan? Now, another lawyer told me that they offer additional estate planning above and beyond your healthcare power of directives, your healthcare directives, as well as your power of attorney documents and any trust documents. And so when I asked what that meant, this is when I heard the words Medicaid planning. And so part of my brain has to dash ahead and try to figure this out while I'm hearing this information. And my only assumption that I came up with was, are you assuming that everyone will run out of money? Or are you assuming that everybody wants to go to a long-term care community Medicaid bed? And that's a big question in my mind. Okay. So when I heard that, those are my assumptions, that everyone will run out of money. And even if you wouldn't run out of money, do you really want to go to a long-term care community Medicaid bed? Another financial planner told me that they are so shocked by the cost of senior care. They are deeply concerned about their clients' ability to age well financially. And the next sentence was, they said they are advising clients to consider Medicaid planning as a financial strategy. Why? That's my question. Another financial planner told me that creating an irrevocable trust could be a great financial strategy to protect your assets as you age. That sounds really good. So, why wouldn't an irrevocable trust be a great idea? Well, I would probably need to know more about the type of trust that would accomplish that and what that means if I create a trust that I no longer have control over. So for your benefit, I've compressed these conversations so that I could give an example of how important it is for you to understand your finances, your legal documents, and what strategies are really best for you, your life plan, and your personal situation. Now, we just defined Medicaid planning, so let's review what a revocable and an irrevocable trust mean. The words really are not confusing, even though we don't use them every day in our typical conversations, but they do give us a clue as to what kind of trust is being discussed. A revocable trust, also known as a living trust, is a trust that can be managed and changed by the people who created the trust. So if you're working with your attorney to create a trust, then you manage it and you can change it. And you can do that at any time with the help of your attorney. An irrevocable trust is a trust that cannot be modified after it is created without the beneficiary's consent or court approval, and possibly both, depending upon the situation. This means that someone else now is in charge of the trust because you've given that power to someone else. So many times, a senior adult might create an irrevocable trust when they don't have decision-making capacity, and so that would put those assets and administration of the trust into someone else's power. But because of lack of mental capacity, or because this kind of document has been created, you do not have the ability to change it. Okay? So be aware of that. An irrevocable trust is to show that you don't have any assets because you put it in a trust that you no longer have access to. It's like it doesn't exist. You've legally transferred your assets to someone else, and these kinds of trusts are often used for asset protection, estate planning, and estate tax planning. Sounds amazing. It sounds like it could be a really good item. Let me give you an illustration from someone I knew who had called me and said to me, Linda, my father has been advised that if he wants to be qualified for a veteran benefit, then he should create an irrevocable trust. Well, that might not make much sense to you, but his assets put him above the income limit to be considered for this aid and attendance pension benefit available to veterans. And at that time, the VA did not have a look back. In other words, they wouldn't go back and investigate as to what happened to his assets. So the irrevocable trust strategy was being used as a workaround so that the veteran could get the benefit. So the daughter had called to get my opinion, and then I don't, this is not my job, is to give you my opinion. I can give you some guidance. I can let you know what's happening in the industry. But I simply asked her if her father was okay with transferring his assets and the decision-making to someone else. And she said, Linda, not at all. He is not comfortable with that at all. I'm not even comfortable at going to him and having that conversation. I said, I think you have your answer. And she said, yes, I think so too. Well, why Medicaid planning? And this is what I see on my side of the desk when I'm talking to financial planners and lawyers and other people who do not see everything from my vantage point. And the question I asked earlier is, would you want to go into a Medicaid bed? Would you want to show Medicaid that you didn't have any assets so that you could be placed wherever or get minimum care benefits? Is that really part of your life care strategy? Or perhaps in visiting with your attorney and your financial planner, this is super good because it protects your taxes, it protects your assets, and maybe you will never utilize a Medicaid bed. But it's something that you really have to think about. Did you know, and this is from MarkhamLLP.com, since February 2020, at least 774 nursing homes in the U.S. have closed permanently. These closures have resulted in 28,000 residents being displaced. In other words, when the building closed, those residents now have to find another place to live that is Medicaid eligible. And additionally, 400 plus nursing homes are projected to close in 2022 based on current financial reports. The majority of these closures are due to factors like financial pressures and staffing shortages. And I can tell you that in my area, there are fewer long-term skilled communities than there were. Some have closed and some have been forced to close because of the care that they were providing. But I am not completely sure whether or not this will be an option as people begin to age at the rate that seniors are aging in our country today. So now that you have some of those facts, you're better able to discern whether or not you would be open to Medicaid planning. And of course, remember the asset protection from Medicaid and the tax benefit available to you. But I have learned, and I am sure you have too, that money opens a Pandora's box in families, and that money is truly, or can be, the root of all evil. The Department of Justice's report indicates that over 225,000 individuals were victims of elder financial exploitation during the period of July 1st to June 30th. A significant percentage of financial abuse cases involved family members or trusted individuals. I just had somebody tell me the other day that their loved one is now living in affordable housing because someone had exploited them out of their wealth. Now, do I still recommend professional advice? Absolutely, I do. I pulled this quote from the Council of Aging website, and this is what it says. Self-planners, beware. One should not implement Medicaid estate planning strategies without professional assistance. The rules that govern Medicaid eligibility and Medicaid estate planning strategies vary based on the state, with the marital status, and even veteran status in some states. One specific circumstances need to be taken into account, and that's what I tell you as well. This could be a very helpful tip and tool. It could not work for you. In the event that you would need this Medicaid benefit, you can't just go into a Medicaid bed. You have to be assessed. Your doctor needs to sign off on it. So if you're fairly healthy and you don't need 24/7 care in an inpatient bed, you're simply not going to qualify for it. And so would it be better for you to have your assets so you can determine where you want to live and how you want to do it? And those are the things that you have to decide for yourself. Here is my caregiver tip for today. If you're a caregiver and you are currently seeking information about a long-term care community or a rehab community, please go to Medicare.gov. On their website, you can locate communities in your area. Plus, you can see their star rating and if any deficiencies or abuse are noted. Many long-term care communities require a minimum of months and years of private pay before considering Medicaid placement. Some continuing care communities have limited availability for private pay or Medicaid beds unless you are a resident in another part of their community. The good news is that some of those communities might have a benevolence fund. Thank you for listening today, and join me again next time when we get educated. Thank you for joining me today. Please remember that this podcast is intended as education and not advice. Don't forget to share this podcast with family, friends, or colleagues who want to learn how to age in place, but also share this with those who find themselves in crisis mode. Please go to my website, seniorsupportstrategies.com, for more information. When you subscribe to Aging in Place Strategies and Answers, you gain access to premium content and professional tips on creating your own Aging in Place roadmap. As always, I value the time you spend with me.